What happens when you mistake quiet for weakness? How does a desperate, childish plea for attention become a meticulously documented case for your own destruction? Can a single, reckless night, designed to create a spark of jealousy, end up revealing the cold, hard truth that the fire you thought was smoldering had actually turned to ash years ago? I know the answers now. I live inside them, in the hollowed-out space where my life used to be. My wife, Maya, was a creature of profound stillness. Where I was a chaotic swirl of energy, needing constant motion and noise to feel alive, she was the calm center, the anchor. For the first 5 years of our marriage, I called it her strength. I'd come home from a frantic day at the marketing firm, my mind buzzing with deadlines and anxieties, and she would simply look up from her book, offer me a small, placid smile, and the storm inside me would quiet. She never demanded attention. She simply inhabited her space with a self-possessed grace that I both admired and, if I'm being honest, resented. I told myself the resentment was born of love. I told myself that her quiet was becoming a chasm between us. Our dinners, once filled with easy chatter, had settled into a comfortable silence that I began to interpret as indifference. Her touch, once electric, became a gentle, predictable routine. She wasn't unhappy, or at least, she never said she was. She was just calm. Always so terribly, maddeningly calm. I started to crave a reaction, any reaction. I wanted a fight. I wanted her to yell, to throw a plate, to show me that there was still a tempestuous passion lurking beneath that serene surface. I wanted proof that I could still affect her, that I still mattered enough to disrupt her peace. That's the story I told myself anyway. The truth is, I was bored. And I was insecure. Her self-sufficiency felt like a rejection of my own chaotic neediness. I had built my personality around being the vibrant one, the one who brought the energy, and her quiet contentment seemed to exist entirely without my input. So I decided, in a moment of what I can only describe now as catastrophic vanity, to manufacture a crisis. I needed to see her fight for me. The perfect opportunity presented itself at our friend Sarah's annual backyard party. It was one of those warm, late summer evenings where the air is thick with the scent of grilled food and citronella. Maya was where she always was at these things, sitting with a small group of old friends, listening more than she spoke, a glass of white wine held delicately in her hand. She looked beautiful, serene, and utterly unreachable. And then there was Chloe. Chloe was Maya's best friend from college, and in many ways, she was my opposite's opposite. Loud, effusive, and a little bit messy. She and I had always had a sparky, competitive rapport. Maya found it amusing. I saw an opening. I told myself it would be harmless. A little too much laughter, a hand held a moment too long, a whispered joke that made us lean in close. I just wanted Maya to see. I wanted her to look over, see me with her best friend, and feel that jolt of possessiveness, of fear. I wanted her to march over, grab my hand, and pull me away with a glare that said, "She's mine." But she didn't. She just watched, her expression as placid as ever. And that, more than anything, fueled my recklessness. It became a challenge. The more she ignored it, the further I pushed it. We moved from the crowded patio to the dimmer edges of the yard. Our conversation, fueled by gin and my own toxic need for validation, drifted into more dangerous territory. Chloe was recently single and feeling raw, and I used that vulnerability like a key. I listened intently. I touched her arm in sympathy. I told her she was brilliant and deserved better. By the end of the night, when I told her I was walking her to her car, the line had been crossed so thoroughly it was no longer visible. We didn't kiss. Not a real one. It was something messier, a desperate, clumsy collision in the dark that was over as soon as it began. It meant nothing. I told myself it meant nothing. When I got back to the party, Maya was ready to go. She was standing by the gate, her purse on her shoulder. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just said, "I called us a car." "It's 2 minutes away on the ride home." She looked out her window, the city lights sliding across her face. The silence in that car was heavier than any I had ever experienced. It wasn't a comfortable silence. It was a weighted one, dense and absolute. I waited for the explosion, for the questions, for the tears. Nothing came. We got home. She went through her nightly routine, washing her face, brushing her teeth, laying out her clothes for the next day, with the same unhurried precision as always. She climbed into bed, turned to her side, and said, "Good night, Amelia." The next morning, the quiet continued. It was terrifying. She made coffee. She read the news on her tablet. She didn't look at me with anger or sadness. She didn't look at me at all, not really. It was as if I had become a piece of furniture, a part of the scenery she no longer needed to acknowledge. I tried to break it. I made a joke. She gave a non-committal hum. I asked what she wanted to do that weekend. "I have some things to sort out," she said, her eyes still on the screen. That was the first sign, the first real tremor of fear that what I had done was not a spark but an earthquake. Her calmness wasn't passive. It was active. It was a decision. She didn't yell. She just withdrew. The warmth that had always been there, simmering under the surface, was gone. The house felt degrees colder. Over the next week, the evidence of her quiet industry began to accumulate in small, unnerving ways. I started hearing the software of our home office printer late at night. When I asked what she was printing, she'd say, "Just some work things." One afternoon, I tried to log onto our shared laptop to check a bank statement and found the password had been changed. When I asked her for the new one, she just said, "I'll pull up whatever you need," without looking away from her own screen. She was polite. So terribly, chillingly polite. A new folder appeared on her desk. It was a simple, beige file folder, the kind you get at any office supply store. It was labeled in her neat, perfect handwriting, "Household." I told myself it was for bills, for insurance documents. But it felt different. It sat on her otherwise immaculate desk like a small, self-contained bomb. My curiosity warred with a growing sense of dread. One day, while she was out for a run, I let the dread loose. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't bills. It was a log. A printed-out spreadsheet. Dates, times, and short, objective descriptions. August 14th, 11:42 p.m. A. Return to party. Perfume. Not hers. August 16th, 9:15 a.m. Call from C. Went unanswered. August 18th, 3:20 p.m. A. Asked about weekend plans. Deferred. It was a catalog of my own behavior, of her observations, rendered in the cold, dispassionate language of a lab technician. My stomach turned to ice. This wasn't the work of a wounded wife. This was the work of an archivist building a case. She wasn't grieving. She was preparing. I snapped the folder shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt a frantic urge to confront her, to scream, to finally have the fight I'd been trying to provoke. But the evidence in that folder had changed the dynamic. I was no longer the one in control. The silence I had tried to break had been her shield, the space she needed to work. And I had no idea what she was working towards. My panic escalated. I started lashing out in small, pathetic ways. I left my clothes on the floor. I came home late without calling. I played my music too loud. Each action was a desperate plea. See me. React to me. Get angry. She didn't. She just picked up my clothes and put them in the hamper. She just left a plate of food for me in the microwave. She just closed her bedroom door. She didn't get angry. She just adjusted. She was quietly, methodically excising me from her life, all while we were still living under the same roof. One evening, I saw a notification pop up on her phone, which she'd left on the coffee table. It was a calendar reminder. Meeting, J. Alvarez, ESQ 10 a.m. and Esquire. A lawyer. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. This wasn't just about her being upset. This was procedural. This was the end, being planned and executed with the same quiet efficiency she applied to everything in her life. I confronted her that night. I couldn't hold it in any longer. My voice was tight with a fear that was curdling into anger. "Who is J. Alvarez?" She looked up from her book, her expression unreadable. She placed her bookmark carefully between the pages before closing it. "She's my lawyer." The words hung in the air, simple, factual, and utterly devastating. "A lawyer? Maya, for what? Are you serious?" Over one stupid, meaningless flirtation. My voice was rising, cracking with a desperation I hated. She didn't match my volume. She never did. It wasn't just one, Amelia. And it wasn't meaningless. It was a choice. You wanted a reaction. This is it. This isn't a reaction. This is an execution. You're supposed to be hurt. We're supposed to fight. We're supposed to work through it. You don't just hire a lawyer. For the first time in weeks, she met my eyes directly. There was no anger in them. There was no pain. There was just a vast, clear emptiness. There is nothing to work through, she said, her voice as calm as a frozen lake. You showed me the truth of our marriage. I'm just acting on it. Properly. That word again. Properly. It was how she did everything. Properly. Methodically. Completely. I realized then that I hadn't just made her jealous. I had made her clear. I had given her the final piece of data she needed to close a case she'd likely been building for years. My grand, dramatic gesture hadn't created a spark, it had simply illuminated the exit. The end came, not in our quiet apartment, but in public. She asked me to meet her for coffee a week later. I went, clinging to a sliver of hope that this was a negotiation, a final chance. I told myself she was just trying to scare me. We sat at a small table in a bright, airy cafe filled with the cheerful noise of strangers. She looked peaceful. It was the most infuriating thing I had ever seen. She slid a thick manila envelope across the table. It landed with a soft, final thud. These are for you, she said. My hands shook as I opened it. Divorce papers. On top, a petition for dissolution of marriage. But that wasn't all. Beneath them was a binder, thicker than the folder I'd seen on her desk. I opened it. It was a masterpiece of devastation. Color-coded tabs divided the sections. Communications, financials, witness accounts inside were printouts of every text message I had exchanged with Chloe, not just from that night, but for months leading up to it, highlighting the escalating intimacy I had dismissed as banter. There were copies of credit card statements showing the bar tab from the party, the late-night car service I'd taken home alone. There was a printed, sworn, and notarized affidavit from Sarah, the party's host, stating she'd seen me leave the main area with Chloe and not return for over an hour. There was even a screenshot of a deleted photo from Chloe's social media, time-stamped from that night, of the two of us laughing a little too closely, a photo I'd begged her to take down the next day. Maya must have seen it in the few hours it was up. Every lie I had told myself, every justification, was laid bare and neutralized by a cold, hard fact. She had gathered it all. The late-night printing, the password changes, the quiet hours she spent in her office, it all clicked into place. She hadn't been stewing in silent anger. She had been working, documenting, preparing. How could you do this? I whispered, the noise of the cafe fading to a dull roar in my ears. This is cruel. No, she said, her voice still infuriatingly level. Cruel is setting a fire to see if someone will run back into the building for you. This is just the paperwork. She stood up. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. I've already moved my personal things out of the apartment. You can stay there until the lease is up. She turned to leave. A man at the next table, who I hadn't even noticed, stood up as well. He handed me another, thinner envelope. Amelia Foster? You've been served. He was a process server. She had me served, officially, in the middle of a crowded coffee shop. The public humiliation was the point. The attention I had so desperately craved was finally on me. Every eye in the place was on our table, on the thick binder of my failures, on my crumbling face. I had wanted a spectacle. She had given me one. But she was the director, and I was just the disgraced star. She walked out of the cafe and did not look back. The months that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. My lawyer told me it was hopeless. She has everything, he said, flipping through the binder I'd brought him. There's nothing to contest. Her proposal is fair, but it is non-negotiable. I lost the apartment. I lost half our savings. I lost the life we had built. But most of all, I lost her. The divorce was finalized in 6 months, our record time, my lawyer said. Of course it was. Maya had done everything properly. It's been a year now. I see her sometimes, from a distance. I was walking through the park last weekend, the one near our old apartment. I saw her on a bench, throwing a ball for the dog we had adopted together. She wasn't alone. Chloe was with her, sitting beside her, laughing at something she said. Their friendship, which I had tried to use as a weapon, had been repaired. They both looked happy. They looked peaceful. Maya threw the ball, and as she watched the dog run, her face was filled with a light, easy contentment I hadn't seen in years. It was the look of a person who had put down a great and terrible weight. I realized, with a clarity that felt like a physical blow, that the weight had been me. All my noise, my drama, my desperate need to be the center of her world, it had all just been dead weight. I stood there, behind a tree like a coward, and watched the woman I loved, the woman I had destroyed my life over, thrive in my absence. I had wanted to make her jealous. I had wanted her to see what she could lose. But all I had managed to do was show her exactly what she needed to get rid of to be free. She never looked my way. She didn't have to. She knew I wasn't there. She didn't look back that day in the cafe, and she hadn't looked back since. And I finally understood that the silence I had hated so much wasn't emptiness. It was the sound of her preparing to live a life that no longer included me.